Hey, Marcus House with you here, and welcome to episode 13 in our quick progression series. Today we're continuing on in our mission to land on Duna. And as well, we've got our other satellite which we can use to do missions on Duna and Ikes as well. Now, if you haven't watched the first part of this mission, I highly recommend you go back and watch that episode first. Obviously in this mission we've already built our rocket and we've launched to Duna. And you'll recall we left on a bit of a cliffhanger, our entire vessel heading on a suicide mission into Duna's surface. So let's hope all of our decouplers work, let's hope our engines work, otherwise we could be in a world of hurt. So we're just going to turn prograde here, and of course what we really want to do is leave this empty stage behind to crash into Duna. Again, trying to keep our space junk out of the way, so we'll decouple here. And we're also going to decouple the lander portion of this craft. So of course, given the current trajectory of all three of these components, they're actually destined right now to crash into Duna's surface. We're not going to let that happen though, we're actually going to move the two important parts of our craft here away. The first thing I want to do here is actually give some good distance between our lander and the rest of our stages, so we're going to burn prograde on this stage just for a few moments. And because there's still quite a bit of time before we actually reach Duna, we can put a lot of distance between our lander and the satellite behind us. This means we can essentially have landed our lander well before our satellite even comes anywhere near the periapsis at Duna. Now of course if we didn't do this, we would essentially be needing to control both of our vessels at the same time, which would be really awkward. So we've set a manoeuvre node and we're just going to adjust our flyby. And we basically want to adjust it just so that we're going to be coming in through the lower atmosphere of Duna. So just playing around with the manoeuvre node here, we want to basically get this down, probably around that 23 kilometre mark, about there. This should allow us to bump off a lot of speed in Duna's atmosphere. So just turning there towards our manoeuvre node marker, and we're just going to get ready to do this very small burn. Literally only about 1.5 metres per second there. Quite often on small burns it's great to cancel the manoeuvre node and just do a burn in place so that you can watch your periapsis climb. So that's about right there, 20,000 metres, that should be fine. Duna's atmosphere is modelled quite like Mars. It's very, very thin atmosphere. It's the equivalent of around 1/15th the surface pressure of Kerbal itself. Because of that we're going to use our engines as well as Duna's atmosphere to slow down. So we're just going to time warp into our periapsis marker now. And you can already see that well behind us, our other satellite is lagging well behind. Actually, we won't go all the way to our periapsis, we'll actually now switch to the other satellite in here behind us. Now we actually want our satellite to get into an orbit of Duna, so we're going to want to raise our periapsis for this particular vessel quite a lot higher, and we're actually going to do a regular burn without entering Duna's atmosphere in order to get into that orbit. So just playing around with the manoeuvre node here to actually plan this, what we also want to do of course is we actually want to get our inclination as spot on to Ikes as we can, because we're actually going to use this satellite to get into Ikes orbit at a later time. And you'll see I've done that by just lining up the orbit lines as closely as I can. So this little burn, it's only around 35 metres per second, it's going to set us up quite nicely to do our future missions for this particular vessel. So off we go, and we've got to first activate our engine, and off we go. The very first mission to Mars of course was by Mariner 4, which was sent out by NASA and actually arrived in 1965. And up until that point they were plagued with a heap of failures, so it was a great achievement to get there finally. We'll actually just push a little bit further here, just pushing that up just a little more. There's no need for us to be this close really, we'll just bump that up to about there, about 70 kilometres. So that's looking pretty good there. So we'll just come back and switch back to our lander. There she is, hopefully the first little lander to land on Duna's surface. Let's hope so anyway, we don't want to be plagued with failures. Just warping into our periapsis marker. And of course we don't want to enter our atmosphere with these solar panels extended. They're just going to rip off if we do that, so we better contract those down. We'll have more than enough power for our landing stored in our battery at this point. Now that we're in the atmosphere of Duna for the first time, however, we're going to grab some science data. So we'll just grab this pressure reading, send that back, and we'll grab a temperature reading as well, of course. As we come into the atmosphere for the first time, we want to turn retrograde so that we don't burn up. Keep in mind, of course, the atmosphere is a lot thinner, so it's not going to generate anywhere near the same amount of heat that Kerbin's atmosphere does. Because the atmosphere is so thin as well, we're also going to be utilising our engines, and our engines are going to burn at our periapsis marker, essentially as if we were landing on a planet with no atmosphere at all, simply so that we can avoid a lot of that heat. So just starting our retrograde burn now, and we're just going to wipe off enough speed just so that we're entering back into the lower atmosphere without too much velocity. With a much bigger vessel, of course, you would probably come in with a heat shield of some kind, because you do need a big heat shield to slow you down quite effectively. The reason we're not doing that, though, is because this is only a very small craft, and if we actually added a heat shield, the smallest heat shield we can get for this thing is a couple of ton. So that's almost as much as the entire craft, so it just doesn't make sense to lug that whole heat shield around just so that we can help with a bit of braking. In reality, as well, as I said before, this particular tank has got plenty of Delta V. We actually don't need as much as we've even got, so this is not a problem what we're doing at all. So that should be about enough there. We don't need to wipe all of our velocity off. We're going to let the atmosphere do some of the hard work. There's no need to burn for no reason at all. In a real life scenario, one of the most difficult things about operating a spacecraft that's automated like this particular satellite is basically that Mars, or Duna, is so far away. Due to the speed of light limitations, communication with these vessels can sometimes be many minutes. In fact, with the Curiosity rover, the delay in communication time was actually longer than the entire landing phase. And that of course means that if something had have gone wrong during the landing, nobody at NASA would have known for quite some time. For that reason, the landing phases need to be pretty much entirely automated. So the atmosphere has slowed us enough, we can pop out our drogue chutes and let them slow us down. These chutes are going to knock off the vast majority of our remaining velocity. So we're now only coming down at 25, 26 metres per second, so that's very, very easy to wipe that off just with our little engine that we've got here. So I've just got the time warp on, just trying to bypass some of the wait time on this landing. We're doing very well from a fuel point of view, we've got plenty for the landing. We could have very well gotten away with an even smaller fuel tank on this particular part. So we just want to start slowing down with our engines now, just little taps on the shift and control keys. Just trying to get that thrust spot on for a smooth landing. Whoop, 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 just trying to get that about right, and touchdown for the first time on Duna's surface. So this is fantastic, of course. We've now got our very first vessel on Duna's surface. We can take some science readings any time we're required to from the missions area of the Kerbal Space Centre. For now, though, we're going to grab the science that we haven't already sent back, so we'll grab a temperature scan, and we'll send that back. Now, we're not going to have a great deal of electric charge left here. We've only just popped our solar panels out. What we need to do is ensure that we don't stay down here too long while our other vessel's actually incoming. So we can't just time warp and fill up our batteries, otherwise we're going to miss our other manoeuvre in our satellite above Duna. So we can certainly store the rest of our scientific data. We don't have enough electricity here to send it back at this point in time, but we can always just jump over to this vessel and send that data back whenever we want to. So I've already completed a couple of our missions, or at least partial parts of our missions and some milestones, so we'll just jump in and have a look. We've completed the transmission of science from the surface of Duna. We've landed on Duna as well, of course, and a number of milestones too. First flyby of Duna, first scientific data from Duna, landed on the surface of Duna and entered atmospheric flight. And of course we've also completed our flyby Duna contract as well. So we're going to leave our little lander down here to recharge, and we're going to head back and switch to our incoming satellite. Just switching back to map view here, and we can see that our satellite is actually still quite some ways off. So just right click and switch to that vessel. Now we're going to want to get this vessel into a Duna orbit first of all, so we're just going to get ourselves down into our periapsis. Before that though, we can check out our Duna debris that's actually following us in here. And as we time warp in towards our periapsis marker, we can also track that our debris is going to hit on the surface of Duna. The atmosphere would have slowed it a little, but it's going to hit pretty hard. It's coming in there at about 1700 meters per second. And impact. No space debris for us. So just coming up to our periapsis marker now, and we're going to turn retrograde and get ready for this incoming burn. So we're using the much larger Terrier engine on this particular vessel, and that's got a much larger thrust to weight ratio compared to our little lander anyway, so this isn't going to take us too long at all. What we basically need to do here is bring this particular vessel down into an orbit inside Duna's sphere of influence. And there we go, that'll do there. So we still haven't completed all the requirements for our Duna exploration mission, and we can actually grab the rest of those now. We need to get some science from space around Duna. So we'll start off by collecting our pressure data here from space around Duna. And of course we're going to grab a temperature scan, and we'll send that back as well. So we've now finished our mission to explore Duna, and there's another 337,000 in funds there. We've also created those sub-parts of the mission, transmitting data and achieving orbit around Duna. So before continuing on, we're going to head back to our Kerbal Space Center, back to our tracking station, and we're just going to head back to our Mission 9 craft at Minimus, and we're going to pick up that remaining science that we've accumulated. Again, it's always good to pick up this science whenever you can. And we're going to head into Mission Control, see if there's something we can pick up. Oh, yes, there is. There's Flyby Ike. Excellent, that's what I wanted to see. So we can pick up that one. And we can also pick up this Explore Ike mission as well. Now, these are some big missions with some big payouts, and because we're already out there ready to do them, then it's no skin off our nose. We can do them right away. So now that we've picked up those new missions, we're going to head back to the tracking station and back to our Duna probe. It can be really beneficial to systematically come back on long missions to see if there's any new missions to pick up which you can do at the same time. So remember, you can pick up science from space near a body, but you can also pick it up from space high above a body as well, and they actually give you two different results. So we're grabbing our experiments from space high above Duna. Just remember, of course, that if you don't have enough electric charge to send back all of your data, then you need to either allow partial with your antenna, which lets you send small chunks of data at a time, or of course wait until your charge is full so you can send all the data in one hit. So we're going to head off and do our Ike missions. The first thing, of course, is we need to actually get an Ike encounter set up. So we're just playing around with our maneuver nodes here. And really the first step in making this encounter is raising our periapsis up so that we're much further away from Duna. This is going to bring our ascending and descending nodes further out from Duna, making those burns more efficient when we adjust there as well. So there's only a small 42 meter per second burn to do here. And of course we've got a lot of fuel left in this stage, so we can still do loads of things with this particular satellite. So we're just time warping up to our apoapsis there. And of course this time we're going to be doing a prograde burn to increase the distance in our periapsis from Duna's surface, and that's going to get us up much closer to the orbit of Ike. Some of these low gravity bodies are really great because it doesn't take a lot of delta V to do these things. So there we go, there's our burn completed. Now we're going to make sure that we've got good alignment, so we're going to warp down to our ascending node. And our aim, of course, is to make sure that our ascending node is essentially reading 0.0 after we've finished completing our next maneuver. And that's going to mean we've got a very close inclination to Ike. So we just need to do an anti-normal burn. Remember, if you're trying to adjust your inclination at your ascending node, it's anti-normal all the time. So we're just going to do a slight anti-normal burn until we wipe off any difference. We're at 4 degrees at the moment, bringing that down now, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degree, and that's about 0.0 there. So that's perfect alignment we've got there now. Now we just need to warp into our periapsis, and we're going to make an adjustment until we get an encounter. Like that. Simple as that. Because our existing orbit is actually so high in relation to Ike's orbit, we've actually got a lot of flexibility. Regardless, we have to drop our speed down in relation to Ike, so we can bring our apoapsis marker back to any point that's going to allow an encounter. So we'll just time warp into our maneuver node there so that we can actually perform this burn. Again, this is another very small burn, another 40 odd meters per second needed here, just to wipe off most of our relative velocity with Ike so that we can make this encounter. So that burn's done, and we'll just focus view on Ike now. And that orbit is actually pretty good right there. We'll just slightly adjust this so that our periapsis comes down just a little more. We want to get as close to Ike as we can. The faster your velocity, the better your efficiency is when making your burns. due to the O-berth effect. Not that there's much of an O-berth effect with Ike. Well, I picked the wrong side. Okay, that wasn't the most optimal thing to do. Okay, we're just going to do a retrograde burn here, wipe off our relative velocity as much as we can. It's not going to cause us too much damage. That'll do there. We just need to catch it on the way around. Okay. I'd picked the wrong side. For some reason I thought we were entering from the opposite side of Ike. Okay, so we're just going to grab some of our science readings from space high over Ike. This will complete one of the parameters of our Explore Ike mission. Temperature data there logged and sent, and pressure data logged and sent as well. So we've completed that Transmit Science Explore parameter there, and we've achieved an orbit as well. And the milestones, we've grabbed our first flyby of Ike, we've escaped the gravitational influence of Duna, we've entered the orbit of Ike, and grabbed that science data too. So now we're going to actually come in and we're going to do an Ike landing. Basically going to warp right round again until we meet up at the right spot. We basically want to orbit around Ike here in a clockwise direction, obviously. We're going to come round just so that we're well off from our periapsis on the opposite side. As we come around Ike, you can see Ike actually spins quite quickly. And because of that, we're going to stop well before our periapsis just so that we can sort of pick a nice spot that we'd like to land. So just turning retrograde now, we're going to do our Ike entry burn. When we were on the opposite side of our orbit, we were actually grabbing science from space high above Ike. Down here though, we're actually at space near Ike, so again, due to that difference, we can actually pick up a whole new set of results from here. So we'll actually keep warping into our periapsis marker. I'm just going to set up a maneuver node as well, just to give us a bit of a guesstimate as to how much delta V we're going to need to wipe off most of our speed. You can see there it's around 190 meters per second that we need to wipe off there initially to drop to the surface. And of course the idea will be that as we come in towards the surface we'll wipe off our remaining velocity. So we'll just start our burn here and in we come. We'll just turn down the gimbal of that engine, it's going pretty crazy. I'm not sure why it is that the gimbals are actually set that high by default. They can get pretty out of control and they can cause a lot of instability sometimes, especially if you've got your SAS mode on. So we're just continuing doing these little burns here just to get ourselves right down. Now our orbit's only around 100 meters per second now, our velocity, so we'll just time warp in. As I said before, this particular vessel's got a very high thrust-to-weight ratio, so there's no problem wiping off a lot of speed in a very short amount of time. So it can actually approach almost on a suicide burn, coming in flat out, and we can actually just wipe all that velocity off, really just at the last minute. This is of course what SpaceX have been doing recently when they've been landing the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket down onto the autonomous spaceport drone ship. It wipes off all that speed very quickly, right in the last few seconds of the landing. Sadly though, the computers in the first stage of that rocket have a much better reaction time than me, so I'm not going to take quite that amount of risk. We're going to slowly but surely just wipe off the speed just in these bottom 1,000 meters. There we go. And... whoop. Too sensitive, and touchdown. Whoop, 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 whoop. Ah, that's better. Okay. She's a little wobbly. As long as it'll sit there and behave itself though, it will be fine. It's going to do what we need. Of course, that is going to involve doing a couple of science experiments. Again, we're going to grab all three of the science experiments here because we're on the surface. We can grab all of them. We can even grab the seismic data this time as well. We've got to keep in mind, of course, that the amount of energy we can obtain from sunlight with our solar panels at Duna and Ike is actually much lower than at Kerbal. We just need to allow partial again on our antenna so that we can send all that back. This just means that because we've got such a large amount of data to send with our seismic data, we can do that over a larger period of time. When you do use that allow partial option for some of these bigger experiments like the seismic data scan, sometimes you'll find that not all of the science did transmit 100%, so you need to come back and actually take subsequent readings and then attempt to send those back. And you might have to do that repeatedly a few times. That's just if you've got a few small batteries like we do on these very small satellites that we've created for this mission. The wonderful thing about this particular probe is that it's got plenty of fuel left. We could actually almost do another couple of jumps to some biomes around Ike. We could get back into orbit. We could go back into a Duna orbit from here. We can do all sorts of things. So, contract complete. We've now explored Ike, 337,000. We've recovered scientific data from Ike. We've landed on Ike. And we've grabbed that suborbital milestone along with the landing milestone. So we'll just take a little bit of a step back and we'll just reevaluate where we're at right now. We've got one of our landers obviously sitting on Duna's surface. We've got a lander here sitting on Ike's surface, which could potentially be a orbiter again. So this puts us in a great position for future missions out in this area. So we're going to head back to the Space Center. And we'll just warp to the next morning. So after these last 2 episodes, we've accumulated so much. We've now got over 3,300 science points and almost a staggering 4 million in funds. Now that's enough to unlock the next stage of our research and development centre, which is going to give us some new great toys. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you have any questions for me, whack them in the comments below. Thanks very much to all that have subscribed. It's made a huge difference, and for those that haven't, please do support and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at MarcusHouseGame, and we'll see you in the next video. This is a big mission, the first mission outside of Kerbal's sphere of influence. SAS on and launch. So because the thrust to weight ratio is so high on this first stage, we're just going to turn over just around 15 degrees from vertical. And we're just going to slowly gravity turn ourselves towards that 90-degree mark.